Now, some poets broke away from traditional convention altogether, especially modern poets, and they started writing free verse. Now, free verse is exactly what it says. It is an innovation, it's a new way of doing things. Um, in other words, breaking away from convention. And it basically started in the 20th century. And it's very often used in modern times, and especially as a vehicle for um, expressing ideas that are less conventional than usual, as you're going to see with the example that we're going to show you. The idea is that there is no regular rhythm, there's no traditional form in the first place, no regular rhythm or metrical pattern that you can go and scan like that. Also, none of that. It's just like ordinary speech. Although, as with ordinary speech, we do emphasize certain words, don't we, when we speak? So it creates a kind of movement, right? So there is a rhythmical movement, but it's not rhythm per se, it's not rhyme per se, it's just a movement. It's also called a cadence. Cadence, right? Because of the emphasis that we place on certain words, it takes us further, right? So the main thing to remember is that free verse, it's free. It's not bound actually by anything. It's not bound by formal conventions. And as I said, remember, you can also expect that the content will also not be very traditional, very formal. It will be something different. And it allows for greater spontaneity of expression. Now, T.S. Eliot began to experiment with this after the Great War, the First World War. And when he wrote The Wasteland, he achieved some subtle differences, a range of differences by using free verse. He got different effects. He was experimenting with it to great effect. And D.H. Lawrence, also well known for his use of free verse, he believed that skilled poetry with its metrical conventions and the poetic devices would soon be outmoded. In other words, poetry will look different. It'll have this free form. And those of you who know D.H. Lawrence's poetry might have come across a poem called Snake, which is this longish poem, and it's enjambed and so forth, very sort of free flowing, free going, and it suggests the poet's thoughts, his meditations. He comes across the snake, and he is totally mesmerized by it, and suddenly all these ideas come into his mind about what tradition has taught him about snakes, how they're connected with evil, how they should be killed immediately, that they're all poisonous, etc. So you can see that the traditional idea, for instance, of the snake and what it stands for comes to mind, and then he tries to break away from that and give us a different picture of the snake, where he virtually describes the snake as a god. Lovely poem to go and have a look at. Free verse there from D.H. Lawrence. So he believed that these things, strict adherence to poetical devices and the meter and so forth, will be soon discarded. And in fact, in modern times, it really actually happened that many modern poets make use of free verse. Now, one such example is eating poetry. Now, you should always remember that when you look at a poem, the first thing you have to look at is the title, right? And eating poetry. Now, it's easy to imagine that something is meant here which is not literal. You cannot really eat poetry. Look at that, it looks strange. Look at that, I've been eating poetry. Strange. And what it might resemble, if you think of these ideas and the thoughts that might go through your mind when you think of eating poetry, you obviously know that it's not meant literally. So you might get some idea of a dream image, something strange. Because you know that in a dream, anything is possible. Places that you haven't seen or heard about, or even imaginary places, can come together and be relevant. Now, people that are already dead are much alive, etc. And you do things that are strange, right? In dreams. And you wake up and you say, oh, what a strange dream, and then you forget about it, right? So I'm not saying that all free verse is surreal or dreamlike, but in this case, the poet makes use of surrealism. So you're going to have to look at this poem immediately from a sort of surrealist point of view, because I mean, the only place where you can really eat poetry is perhaps in a dream. So what he does is he creates this dream-like background. He is in a library and he starts eating poetry. The librarian is very shocked because that's not to be done. Everything should be very real and very disciplined in a library, and there must be silence at all times. And then, of course, he eventually, the dogs come running and he changes into a dog. He starts barking at the librarian, and so she doesn't understand. The whole thing is he feels elated. He's so happy because he's eaten poetry. But this poor librarian cannot understand it, and she's just shocked. And now he's this dog and he's biting her. So you can get the idea of strange underlying themes perhaps working there, and it's really up to you to go and think of what you want to make of this poem, because it's meant to be surreal in the same way as you cannot sometimes explain a dream, but you can perhaps recognize certain aspects. I think the main thing to look at when we read this poem is to see that his eating of poetry made him happy, and he is in a conventional situation. He feels that it's too conventional. The librarian and all a library stands for is just too conventional, and his happiness has no bounds. He can even become a dog and bark at the librarian and tell her, stop, go away, let us change things, and so forth. So whatever you would like to make of it, let us see, go think about it, right? So it is a poem that superficially looks quite conventional because it consists of 6 tercets. It's as though it's been very clearly structured as in conventional, but it's all but conventional in terms of context. Let's have a look. Also look at Mark Strand, modern poem. He died in 2014, which is not that long ago. So a pretty modern poet. Now, he starts with this vivid picture and very clear, like sometimes a dream is clear like this. He says, ink runs from the corners of my mouth. I've eaten poetry, right? The ink is dripping. There is no happiness like mine. I have been eating poetry. The librarian does not believe what she sees. Her eyes are sad. What is he doing? He's eating poetry. He's eating the books. Please stop it, right? Her eyes are sad. And she walks with her hands in her dress. She has her hands sort of tied. She doesn't know how to deal with this strange poetry eating person. The poems are gone. The light is dim. The dogs are in the basement stairs and coming up. Suddenly there are dogs in this strange dream-like poem. And the dogs are coming up. Their eyeballs roll. Their blonde legs burn like brush. The poor librarian begins to stamp her feet and weep. Things are getting out of control. The dogs are now taking over this library. Oh dear. And now she does not understand. When I get on my knees and lick her hand, she screams. I just want to be friendly with you. I know I'm a dog and I'm disrupting your library, but please, I want to lick your hand. I don't mean bad. I just wanted to eat some poetry. And although I'm now a dog, I want to just make you happy. And then he reflects in the end, in the last tercet. I'm a new man. I snore at her and bark. He is reacting. He is against this traditional setup. He says, I snore at her and bark, but I romp with joy in the bookish dark, because I have actually eaten poetry and it has made me so incredibly happy. So you can take here what you want, leave what you want, but you're going to get something out of it if you start working through the surreal imagery and the surreal ideas.